All right then. Caitlin, thank you very much for being my first interviewee for the pool.
Oh, good morrow, fair lady. It's such a pleasure to see you here.
Thank you for letting us do it in your house as well, and in the kitchen, which is, I think, where you write a lot.
It's basically where I live, yes. Kind of, I sit here all day and type, and then when I finish typing, I ring up my friends and we get drunk and I stay on this chair pretty much all of my life. I've fallen asleep here, I've woken up here and just carried on the day. This is it. This is the throne of power.
That's like almost a song from The Lion King.
Yes.
It's got that vibe about it.
Circle of booze.
So as you know, the pool is a new space online for women, and because of that I wanted to ask you about your life online. How much of your life do you live there?
Well, my biog on my books and stuff says Caitlin Moran is 39 years old and lives with her husband and 2 children on Twitter, and that is pretty much true. I mean, as far as I know, everybody does. Like, when you wake up, the first thing you do is you check Twitter, ostensibly to see if a news story has broken that you need to be informed about, but actually to see if the last thing that you tweeted last night has been retweeted once America have woken up. And then you go to Facebook, and then you come back to Twitter, and then you go back to Facebook again, and then you check the Daily Mail sidebar of shame to see if anyone's got fat or got a bad toe that I need to get angry about. Then I might start doing some work after 2 hours of that, and then there'll be a lunch during which I have to do the online, and then every time I go to the toilet I will check. And I mean, I actually don't understand when I write at all. I live on these places.
So you were quite an early adopter as far as social media goes. Can I take you back to a time when you were a one-horned demon on horseback called
Yes.
Lord Venger? I believe that was your first online alias.
Yes, and in many ways my best. I only wish that I had written under that pseudonym ever since. Yeah, no. In the early days of the internet, there was a gossip magazine email that would go out every week called Pop Bitch, and one week there was a piece of gossip about me in it. So I went onto their message board to see what people were saying about me, and obviously joined under a pseudonym. And the pseudonym that I chose was of Lord Venger, who was a one-horned demon, quite morose and peevish, who lived in a cave. And I lived online on that pseudonym for 2 years. And I learned a really horrible thing, actually. I had such a great time there. I kind of, I was posting all these jokes and kind of like was a bit of a legend. Everyone was like, wow, you're so funny, you should be a professional
We used to
writer.
talk to each other, but didn't know that it was each other.
What was
So
your name on there?
Relatively recent. I can't remember. It was so long ago. I have no memory. It was what my pseudonym was, but I didn't know that you were Lord Venger.
You
until
weren't the person hung
this
like
year.
a horse, who I always thought would be great to meet at a party. Hi, I'm hung like a horse. It's lovely to meet you.
I think I would remember that. But what did you find out that was horrible?
Well, yeah, I've been having a great time, and everyone was like, you're a bit of a legend, you should write professionally. And I was like, heh, 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 little do you know. And then one day, I can't quite remember how, but someone found out that I was a woman, and they found out that I was me, and they sort of vaguely knew of me. And within 20 seconds, I got the first comment about what a fat, unshaggable bitch I was. Like, literally, someone who'd been laughing at all my jokes just went, oh, well, now I know it's Caitlin Moran. I'm imagining her thread veins popping every time she laughs at one of her own jokes that she's posted. And it was like, it was one of those moments where kind of, there was sort of those points in your life where you suddenly don your feminist glasses and you're just like, everything burns now. I see the truth. Oh no, I've been pretending that it's not a horrible sexist world, but it is. I've got my feminist. It burns. It burns. And that was a big it burns moment. It was,
It also sounds like a thumbnail of the internet experience for you. You know, joy and yet so much sadness.
Yes. Well, I believe in. I mean, I've gone through a whole cycle on the internet. I mean, I spend all my time there. I mean, my main belief was, well, first of all, if you're a writer, if there's an arena where you're just words, which is what the internet is, then you become powerful. Finally, you know, in the meat world, writers only usually think about what they want to say, sort of like after they've left the party 2 hours previously, and also they tend to have galloping social anxiety, which is why they drink and smoke constantly. Whereas when the internet, we're in our
Natural
prime,
medium, yeah,
we
exactly.
win. So I felt very comfortable there. And also one of the key things that I'd always thought for women as a feminist is that we just need a space. There's no point in trying to encroach on things that men have already built, because they've done it, they built it for men. And it's just a needless, exhausting, vituperative argument to go, give me space, give me woman's space in a man place. We just need to go away and make our own thing. I'm a separatist in that respect.
And
the
a
internet-
structuralist, so it's a place where you can build new structures. And
in a completely different way. You know, I think men and women do need different mediums, and we communicate in different ways. I think one of the reasons why Twitter's got really overheated is it's built in a very male way, kind of like, you know, it's very penetrative. Like, kind of one of the reasons that people get really angry on Twitter is that if you're following someone, those messages are so small that you don't have a chance to reject it. It gets shot straight into your head. You know, everything that someone tweets goes straight, the whole sentence just goes straight into your head. And so you're constantly being adrenalized and shocked by these bullets of thought. And that's why people get really, that's why it's quite fight or flight on Twitter. And I think if a woman had designed a communication platform, it would be very different. So I loved the fact that the internet had space. And also in the early days of Twitter, it's become angry now, but in the early days, it was women who went on there first. Like, and when I was on there was a group of about 20 women, all writers or comedians and actors.
It was chatty. It was like, I thought it was like the sort of garden fence kind of thing. You just pop your head up and see who's in and go, oh, all right. And you just kind of go, and that's it. It's just those brief little chats and encounters.
It was beautiful.
It seemed like a very female way to communicate.
But it was also really silly as well. Like, I can remember in the early days, I kind of did this thing. I went, let's all go on a day trip. And I went, we're going to go to France today. I'm bored. So who wants to come and catch the ferry with me? And like Maggie Philbin, former presenter of Tomorrow's World, and Sophie Ellis-Bextor went, we'll go to France. And we spent all day typing out this imaginary sort of choose your own adventure trip to France. And kind of, I think Maggie Philbin fell off the side of the ferry. And Sophie Ellis-Bextor went off to buy flick knives from a dodgy person in a sort of side alleyway somewhere in Paris. And then we all came back.
Half the course as far as she's concerned.
I've been on tour with her. And it was just a really jolly day. It was so silly and lovely. It was a completely different thing to what it is now. So to me, it seems obvious that at some point there'll be another place that will allow you to play in that way, role play just with words in the way that you used to in the early days of Twitter.
But it needs to come. I mean, obviously online's a complicated landscape, but it seems to me that it is a kind of example of what's going on a larger scale in feminism, because on the one hand, it seems like we're kind of fighting for very basic freedoms for women, while simultaneously trying to debate the nuances of complex arguments, say language. So you've kind of got this situation where you've got these very basic things like, I don't want to be harassed and abused and threatened online, but you've also got this kind of nuanced argument about let's work out how we talk about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing that because I've seen a lot of people, because, I mean, there's two things. Undoubtedly, online has fueled this massive wave of feminism we've got now. Some of the most notable advances in human rights have been in this country using Twitter. The Daughters of Eve anti-FGM campaign with Layla Hussein and Nimco Ali, was all over the front pages of newspapers. They've changed legislation. They've got, they mounted the first prosecution against it. And similarly, Laura Bates's Everyday Sexism, just kind of, there's so many men who are just going, sexism doesn't exist anymore. And she just started retweeting things that women had said to them to that day. Massive campaigns that have changed things. So it's been very useful in that way. It's definitely changed things. But at the same time, we've seen some of the most appalling examples of women being driven out of public spaces. Someone like Mary Beard appears on Question Time and having the most virulent abuse poured about her physical appearance, and then people will send you pictures of like children who've been exploded in car crashes with your face on it. Horrible stuff. Rape threats, death threats. I've had death threats. I've had bomb threats. And people will despair about that and go that this is really bad. But what we have to understand is that we're still in the very early days of social media. This is the first time the world has been able to talk to the world unmediated. And I think we're in our toddler phase with online at the moment. This is the kind of testing our strength and smashing things up phase. And it will mature. But the world has never been able to talk to itself like this before. So we're having to learn and there is no leader. There's no daddy of the internet. There's no mummy of the internet to come and sort it out. It's like the magic roundabout in Swindon. Everybody's just driving all these cars of opinion around, trying not to crash into each other. And given how many people there are online, it's actually astonishing. It's not worse.
It also seems to me to be a situation where you kind of have the urgent and the important, and you kind of got to distinguish between the two and have those simultaneous arguments. And you can't always talk about the thing that is really urgent, because otherwise you neglect the thing that maybe isn't quite so urgent, say a kind of point about language and the way we use language. That's not going to kill anyone, but it's still important. So how do you kind of prioritise that? What do you think online we should be tackling next to make it a better place for women?
Well, I think we need more space, definitely. I mean, I would like to, it would be nice to be able to, I kind of would like there to be an internet police. When abuse happens, it's referred to the normal police. But a lot of them, you ring them up and they just actually don't know what Twitter is and they don't know how to deal with it. And it's also a waste of police resources for them to be doing these things. We need some kind of internet police. And, I keep being told that...
Would it just be at police?
Yes.
That would be quite cool.
Yeah, you press the police button and then suddenly it just goes, Nino, Nino, really, really loudly, and everything stops and everyone's a bit twitchy. But there's this kind of weird sort of like parallel belief thing going on at the moment. We keep being told that places like Facebook and Twitter wouldn't have the money to be able to police individual cases of abuse and death threats and rape threats. But at the same time, we keep being told that these are companies as big as small countries, that are changing the way that we talk. And so, it's either one or the other, guys. You're either insanely powerful and you shape the future of the world, or, you actually back that up and you need to protect people because people are being driven off there. But I think, in terms with having an internet police, I do like the idea of there being an internet mum or dad, just being able to say, look, the key thing here is that you've got to stop being angry. Because a lot of very hurt people, you know, the internet has given very marginalised people who've been crushed and horribly abused voices and platforms for the first time, and they have all this hurt and anger inside them, very understandably. But if you want to change the world and you want to communicate, if you communicate with hurt and anger, 9 times out of 10, people aren't going to look at what you're saying, they just hear anger and they will respond in an angry way. And so you see this thing that's kind of like ripping feminism apart to a certain extent at the moment online, that there are different factions of feminists all fighting, all hurt, all of whom have a terrible time, all of whom need to be heard, who are just hurt, not listening to what the others are saying, just being angry at each other. And you just need to just take all the heat out of that. The internet needs a big cold flannel put on its head like a mum, and just everybody just told, I can hear that you're really upset, we just need to calm this down. You know, for any woman particularly who wants to communicate, I would say never communicate in anger. You know, it just drowns out your message, and you'll have that thing where people go, you're hysterical. It's far better if you can, and if you can do it calmly, definitely, and if you can do it with humour, suddenly you're right back here, everything's relaxed, the bum clenching stops, people will listen to you, people are more likely to spread your word, so just chill it
But then
down.
at some point the bum clenching kicks back in, because what you're saying is so funny. There could be an
As you
accident.
worry about a prolapse, yes, that's the good kind of bum clenchy, that's like the two kinds of bum clenchy, that's the one I'm looking for.
I mean, this is the thing, it's hampered feminism in the past, where it feels like we're at a point where, you know, the fourth wave has kind of got us so far, but do you think it's going to kind of push forward and break a boundary, or is it going to fall back on itself? It seems like a crucial point that we're at right now.
Yeah, I think it has to continue. Clearly, you know, feminism isn't going to stop now, because the other thing is that, you know, I feel like a very old feminist at 39, and I think there's a lot of feminists out there at 25 who feel really old, because I go and do stuff in schools, and there are, you know, my 11-year-old daughter goes to feminist society at her school, and they sit around talking about stuff, and she's already got to the point where she's like, Mum, why are most books about feminism? Why do they have a picture of a Barbie on the front that's like kind of been like vandalised or got graffiti on it in some way? Because like, yeah, I get it that we're all supposed to feel like we're Barbies, like kind of I'm ready to move on from that. So there's another generation who will do it in a completely different way. You know, they're not going to let go of this idea, because children understand the concept of fairness. This is the whole thing about, you know, civil rights and human rights. Mm-hmm. Children understand this. It's only later on they kind of forget about it. And the other thing you've got to remember about arguments and kind of this whole thing about, you know, the left tearing itself apart, you see that in socialism, you see that in feminism, you see that in you know, in the civil rights movement. And we go, why? I was talking to a friend about this last night, going, why does that happen? And it's because right-wing conservatism is about keeping things as they are. It's about conserving things. And, you know, to be left is to actually be progressive. You're trying to change things. Mm. So, of course, you're going to argue because you're coming up with new ideas. Left-wing ideas, progressive ideas are new ideas. So, of course, there's going to be an argument. So we need to not go, oh, the left's fighting again. It's like the left will always fight. That's the, you know, that's how the crucible of ideas is formed. It's fine. Stop panicking about it.
It's dialectic, yeah. Everybody chill out.
Yeah.
Okay, so which brings us to your many and varied projects, inspired by your own experiences, the latest of which is the Channel 4 show Raised by Wolves. Tell me a little bit about that. Where did that come from? Was the seeds of that in the first book?
That came from wine. In 1999, me and my sister got very, very drunk, and we said, we need to do something together. We'll call it the Genius Project. And we did not know what the Genius Project was.
The modestly titled
The Genius Project. And for a long time, we were going to write a sitcom about two detectives, one male and one female, who'd previously been lovers, who lived in Brighton and fought each other for cases. And then we realised that was moonlighting, and someone had already written it. So we were like, have we got any other ideas? And we looked to our childhood, and it was like, well, that's obvious, you know, kind of a weird, you know, a big family that's funny and bookish and clever. You know, by that point, we'd got our political chops on, and we were like, you know, even then at that point, the depiction of the working classes was just crazy. It's just all you see is kind of ratty feral estates and people taking drugs and having sex and stuff. And it's like, you know, I remember the notion of the progressive working classes. There are people there reading books and Orwell and weird kids on council estates. I want to write about them.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. And then I got pregnant. And then I got pregnant again. And my sister was like, this cliche about writers doing anything they can to avoid writing and procrastinating, it's like you literally like had some sperm inside you and made two human beings to avoid writing this sitcom. Stop getting pregnant. So she bought me some contraceptives and explained where babies came from. And then we started writing it again.
So it's amazing that it actually precedes the first book, because I wondered, I mean, obviously that, you know, the kind of based on question is a bit of a lame question, so I don't really want to go there.
Yeah.
But kind of drawn on personal experience, but it's an idea that you've been kicking sticking around that long. So
Yeah, well, when we were kids, we always used to play games like just with us indies where we would be kind of like acting out roles and we put on plays together and stuff. So kind of writing about our lives was something we'd always done anyway. And then during one of the great breakthroughs of the Genius Project around Bottle 5 was, why don't we try and do this for cash? And so then when we'd finally written it, we took it around to the BBC, and the BBC said, we love it, but we've already got our woman sitcom this year, so we can't make it. And we've got our woman sitcom next year, so if you want to come back in 2 years, that'd be great. And the Genius Project went back to the pub and drank quite a lot of wine and got really angry about that and was just like, literally, we're in a world where you're told there's only one funny woman a year. Screw this, man. And I went away and wrote How to Be a Woman in a fury in 5 months flat, because it was just like, that was my tipping point of feminism. It was like, hang on, this is crackers. Now, I was brought up in the early 90s with Riot Girl, and we thought feminism had won, and it's now got to a point in like 2007 where I'm being told there can only be one funny woman a year. But you realise how quickly it changes. Like now, we live in a world where all the funniest people in the world are women, with the exception of Louis C.K. and Chris Rock. You know, it's all about Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Melissa McCarthy and the new female Ghostbusters and the Broad City Girls and Amy Schumer and Miranda. It's, you know, it's women are the funny people now. Like, if I was a funny man, I'd be very, very worried.
So at the heart of the show, obviously, it's written by the Genius Project was created by siblings, and it is about siblings.
Yes.
To an extent, you know, that central relationship between Jermaine and Aretha.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I don't want to say that there's too much resemblance, but you know, it would.
Yes.
It doesn't take much to look at you and Kaz.
Yeah.
And look at those two and think, well, they're pretty much identical.
Yeah, there's an angry ginger introvert and a garrulous overweight brunette constantly clashing with each other, and then you look at the pictures of me and my sister and you're like, yeah. I mean, the only point we had a kind of weird moment was when it was the auditions, the first casting, and we went into a room where there were 50 angry gingers and 50 garrulous overweight brunettes, and it was like, that was a real kind of, whoa, we on glue moment. So we just filled a room with little mini-me's. So yes, they're obviously based on us, and which, you know, made the writing of it unexpectedly fraught, because we just realised that, you know, when you've got an introvert and an extrovert working with each other, they will fight like cat and dog. And there were several key moments of conflict. The worst one being the argument about whether the mother character, Della, would wear pants or not. And I was absolutely insistent that she would not wear pants. She's a survivalist. She's a very practical woman. She's a single mother of 6. I myself don't wear pants. I think it's an unnecessary layer. I think once you've got either jeans or tights on, you've done a layer. That's all you need to do. Kaz was like, you skanky, unhygienic fell beast. You need some kind of drip tray for your undercarriage. What are you on about? You're doubling your wash here. This is absolutely crazy. You're just going to wear a pair of jeans and put them in the wash. What kind of extravagant total beast are you? That argument lasted about 4 days, and we just finally managed to just brush over it and ignore it. And then the actress who plays Della came in and went, this sounds weird, but for the characterization of this character, I need to know, does she wear pants or not? Because I'm literally sensing that this is a key piece of information.
She's going straight in on a heat-seeking missile on that. So how is it resolved? Who won?
Kaz won. I'm a gentle lady. Well, she thinks she's won. We've told her to play pants on for this season.
Okay.
But for the next series, those pants will come off. There will be a big speech written by me about why pants are unnecessary.
I want to talk about Della because she's amazing. She is, I think it's fair to say, an unlikely hero.
Yes. She's not the hero that Gotham wants or needs, just the hero that turned up in Gotham really textually and went, well, I guess I'd better sort this out then. Well, yeah, she's a single mother of 6, and we were kind of, I mean, when we started first writing the sitcom in 1999 before I got pregnant, I was 24 and Kaz was 21, and so the main characters for us in that were the teenage girls, because we were so near to our teenage years. Now we came back to write it 14 years later, and it's all about the mum for us. And whereas previously we were kind of writing the parents in a kind of, that from the the teenagers' point of view, kind of like, our parents completely ignore us and they're always so angry, I hate our parents, they're rubbish. Now, when we're writing the mum, it's like, yeah, ignore those kids, they're really annoying. You should totally annoy those kids. So that was the journey that we went through. And Della, I think popular culture is very ill-served by mother figures.
Yeah, there aren't many great... I was going to ask about that because, you know, there aren't many really brilliantly complex mums on TV. I mean, there are some.
Yeah.
I think there are some, you know, Last Tango in Halifax has got some great mums in it.
Yes.
Flawed mums.
Yes.
But you must have been very conscious that, you know, you wanted to make her fully complex and heroic but also have these shortcomings. Which
particularly in comedy, they're ill-served because you have sort of the old school sitcom mum just kind of basically comes in and goes, you guys are having crazy fun in here.
Mummy
Stop
pig. I
it
call
now."
that the mummy pig
Exactly,
role.
yeah. Clean it all up now. It's time for the advert break. Or then there was a second layer of sort of like a feminist acknowledgement of the fact that the mums were always the buzzkill. So they're still a buzzkill, but they also whine about it as well and just go, "I'm just completely neglected around here. I have no fun," and that's all you get. And also, they always seem to raise children that hate them, and you're like, I'm finding it really difficult to find you a sympathetic character when you've raised these charmless trolls. Like, kind of, you know, you're not a very good mum. So we wanted to make a funny mum, and she's a survivalist. She believes in the apocalypse. You know, she loves to rant. She's a preacher. And the actress we got to play her, Rebecca Staton, who's amazing, said two things when she came into the casting. First of all, she went, "I want to play this mum like Clint Eastwood. Like, she's just come into town and she's just like, right, I'm going to sort this out. She's a superhero. She's Sarah Connor in Terminator, but in a council house." And so the first one was, "I want to play her like Clint Eastwood." And the second thing she said was, oh God, I forgot what the second thing was she said. Does she wear pants? No. No. Oh yeah, and the second thing was, she was like, "I am the daughter of a preacher. I'm the daughter of a vicar. And he gives sermons every weekend. And that's what I see in Della. She's got these speeches about life that she's a very unique and weird character. And she has these huge speeches that she likes to, and she sees the kids as her congregation, and she preaches like Nick Cave at them, all of her weird beliefs." So those are the two things. It's Clint Eastwood as a mad preacher. And I was like, yeah, that's good.
Bang on. She had the role then. I love a sample Della quote I have, one of my favourites from the first episode, which is where, actually, is it the first one or is it the sixth? I don't want to be a woman, Mum.
Oh, no, go on.
It's later on.
Oh,
So
yes.
One of the kids says to her, who's just started her periods, "I don't want to be a woman, Mum." And she just replies, "None of us do, love, but the men are too chicken shit to handle it, so here we are." Which is like a funny gag, right?
Yes.
So, but interestingly, I put that on Facebook on a little account, which has just got, you know, a few mates following me. And some of the men were really offended.
Really?
And some, they were kind of, like the groovy men were a bit like, "Hey!" And I was like, felt kind of like saying, you know, I can't imagine what it must be like to have someone tell a joke about how you're not the best. Look to camera.
Yeah.
Like,
Imagine that. You would feel angry over a certain period of time, wouldn't you, boys? Yeah. Really.
which is really interesting.
I'm going to go onto your account and see who all those people are, and I'm going to send them little kind of passaic messages. Just kind of like, "Hey, boys, there's a thing in town. It's called feminism. You better get used to it."
But like, where do you draw the line? Because obviously, you know, the priority, I guess, has got to be funny. But
Yes.
what about kind of politically correct language and making sure that everybody's cool with the joke? Yeah, because it's
Yeah, I mean, I think we both are united in the fact that we would rather just throw ourselves into the crack of doom in Mordor at the end of a very large adventure than not be funny. So that's always the key thing. It's got to be funny. There's no point. We only know if it's working if it's funny. And the political stuff it's just about representation, because it's that whole thing. I wrote a thing once when you kind of, the whole thing about equality for women is not being perfect and being Sheryl Sandberg and running a company and kind of achieving everything. Well, no, when we've got true equality, when women are allowed to be as dim, deluded, not so fat and smelly as men are, you know, that's true equality. So, you know, they are flawed characters. They do appalling things. They kind of say terrible things.
Exactly. I thought everyone would get that it would, but
yeah,
interesting. Okay, so you wrote that sitcoms taught you how to be part of a family as a kid, and I wondered which ones you grew up on and what you learned.
Oh God, well, Pivotal was bottom. I mean, again, it's really weird kind of, you realise what you loved as a child. You're just kind of like, this is my taste and I just like these things because these are the best things. And you realise that all the stuff that you loved culturally was absolutely necessary to you to understand what was going on. It was completely apposite. So all the books I read were kind of 19th century, early 20th century books about working class girls who had to make their way as teenagers. It's all about Jane Eyre going off to be a governess. It's all about Jo March having to become a writer. Anne of Green Gables all on her own. Katie Carr in What Katie Did looking after kids. And that was what I was doing. Mm. I had Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. She's a teenager. And obviously that was what I was doing as a teenager who was working and looking after 7 siblings. And similarly, all the sitcoms we were into, we just thought we liked them because they were funny, but it was actually because that was our situation. And Bottom with Rick Mel and Adrian Emerson was the key one for that, because they're two loners with absolutely no friends who are trapped in the house all day, and all they can do is just kind of constantly try to screw each other over for no resources whatsoever. They're arguing over vodka margarine, like kind of, they got nothing. And that was what we were doing. You know, we didn't have any friends because we were home educated. We were just in that house all day, and we would just constantly be trying to screw each other over just for a tiny piece of cheese or a sock that we thought was better than a sock that we had.
I noted that the show has been called a genuine televisual first, a sitcom about intellectuals from a council estate. And I found the kind of note of delightful impossibility in that statement like quite disgusting, or at least pretty patronising. So I want to ask you about the kind of class aspect of the show and the fact that, you know, you've been back to Wolverhampton, you've been back to the house you grew up in, and kind of publicly recently.
Yeah.
Was it the same? What was it like going back?
It was quite depressing, actually. Kind of like, I've been on a journey by going on that journey. We'd been back a couple of months before all of our siblings to go to our favourite nightclub was closing down, and so we had to go back and just dance to Jump Around by House of Pain one last time to remember the 90s. Did a lot of shots, got quite ill. And we went back to the council estate where we'd come from, and I kind of remembered it a bit as like the ghetto, it's like the Badlands, man. And I just had this brilliant revelation as I walked around it. It's like, no, it's quite a dull place and the houses are quite tiny, but it's a safe place. The council provided houses and we were safe there. And we had a library down the road and we had buses and there was a GP's place where we got our vitamin drops, and the state looked after us. That was social provision, and it allowed us to be raised in a calm way and become productive members of society who now pay taxes and pay back every penny that was spent on the raising of us. So I was kind of really proud of what Wolvo was. And, you know, what that council did. And then we went back to the library that we used to go to every day. And that library, when I went there in the 90s, you know, I didn't go to school, so I learned pretty much everything from that library. And it had such a brilliant fiction and non-fiction section. And the librarians were really interested in finding out what you liked and put books aside to you. And they've had massive budget cuts there since austerity. And they'd stripped out nearly all the books, and this is happening at libraries all across the country. They'd taken nearly everything out. All that was left was like Andy McNab and 50 Shades of Grey. It was just kind of, and it's, you know, it's great that you've got entertainment books, but the knowledge had gone. Mm-hmm. And I've gone really Wolvo. The knowledge had gone. Lauren, the knowledge had gone. It was, to be fair, it was unbelievable. But like,
I can't believe it, Deb.
Yeah, I just don't believe I'm going to get Nutty over it. But that just seemed really symbolic to me. And the answer is always, well, the stuff's there on the internet. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people who don't get access to the internet still because they don't have any money. And secondly, the internet. Stuff is ordered, or your access to information is funneled towards you in order of how popular it is. And the most popular things are not going to be the cleverest things or the most relevant things or even the most truthful things. They're going to be an owl wearing a hat. So, you know, but whereas the kind of knowledge that you get from a library where stuff is curated in order of brilliance and importance and the librarian can give you these things, it's a completely different way of learning, and it's random as well. You just wander past a book and go, oh, I'll give that a go, in a way that you don't on the internet.
See, I think this is an internet problem, right? Information, truth. Two different things.
Yes, completely. And diversion as well, kind of like, you know, just all these things that have been written recently about kind of, you know, and there's a thing about feminism as well. There's a quote I read recently about feminism that women were confusing fabulousness with equality. The thing you keep being told over and over again is like, well, you've got fabulous shoes, you know, kind of, you know, you've got jobs now, you can go and do cocktails, that whole Sex and the City thing. It's like, that's not equality, that's fabulousness. Feels great, but it's not going to, like, you know, in 10 years' time when you start having kids, you're screwed. You know, you won't need fabulousness then, you'll need equality. You'll really wish you were marching for it when you could and your knees hadn't gone.
So we've got an election coming up.
Yes.
What are the main issues for you that you're going to be pondering before you enter the voting booth?
Like
I'm
the
sure you
ponderers.
shall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, complete political and electoral reform from beginning to end. I've kind of in my mind written off this election. I think the next one's the one that counts because things have to change. You know, we need things to, first of all, I think by the next election, we will have at least 2 new political parties in this country. People will look at the example of UKIP, where a bunch of clueless asshats are running the political agenda in this country and just go, I could do that. Imagine if I formed a UKIP that was good. Because we've lost, it's amazing kind of, you know, this is again why the whole notion of like a progressive working class and writing this sitcom is so important. I was brought up with a big, angry, shouting, ranty Celtic dad who would talk about the Labour movement and the formation of the Labour Party and the Charterists and you know, and the idea of social progress and nothing to being good for the working man. And so I know that we formed new parties 100 years ago before we had the internet. We'd go door to door and we'd make collections and we'd talk about policies that we wanted to do that would help us and improve us, and then we represented our communities in Parliament. And we just knew that was a possible thing. We've lost that now. We just kind of like just have to choose between what we've got now. No, create a new thing. You know, my answer is always I'm not going to attack the Labour Party. I'm not going to attack the Tories. Make a new thing. Put all that energy into that, into making a new thing. So I think there will be new parties definitely, and we need to have electoral reform because at the moment no one knows why anyone's voting. If I vote Green in this election because I don't think the Labour Party are left-wing enough, people don't know if I think the Labour Party are too left-wing or too right-wing. We're just guessing why everybody's voting. We don't know. So if you have proportional representation, everyone knows why they're voting. We can see what things people want. And secondly, we clearly need to have parties funded by the state You know, we can't have vested interests buying parties and being in charge of them anymore. So those are the things that I would change, which is why I should be running for Parliament.
I was going to say,
in the next
are you
election.
always going to be a voter, or would you ever run?
Well, again, my thing has always been, you change things faster through culture 9 times out of 10 than you do through politics, because culture always marches. Culture is there to inform you. People understand stories and characters better than they do, you know, the non-fictional reports. You know, that's how Orwell started, that's how Dickens started. You start as a polemicist and you write non-fiction, and then you realise the way to get those stories across and change people's minds is to write, you know, 1984, to write Hard Times, you make those characters. And, you know, I believe in changing things culturally. So the next book, this is a trilogy. The first one's How to Build a Girl, and then the same characters are in How to Be Famous. And then the next one's 20 years later, it's set in the present time, and it's called How to Change the World, and they form a political party. Because I want it to be a manual. You followed this girl from 14, you know, badly educated idiot, and you follow her all the way through her life and see that she can form a new political party. And I hope anyone who reads that goes, I could do this. You know, remember that thing that we used to have where working class girls went, I'll form a new party, I will change things. It is possible.
I mean, this is such a long way from the reason that, you know, you wrote How to Be a Woman, and, you know, as you say, kind of being bowled out of that TV executive's office and being told, no, we've got one funny woman, thanks, we don't need another one. And also, I know that, you know, having a younger sister who didn't really know what feminism was, or at least didn't feel connected to it in any way, and that it was relevant to her. I mean, did you think that the ideas would come this far, and that, you know, you'd be here? It's not that long ago. It's a few short years.
Well, what's really amazing is when I first started working for the Times, I thought I had to keep it secret that I was a woman, that I was left-wing, that I was, you know, pro-gay and pro-civil rights stuff. It was like kind of, I'm working for the Times, keep all that quiet, just write funny stuff. And then when How to Be a Woman took off, and also being on the internet, you know, you've got like, when you're on Twitter and you've got 500,000 followers, and you write something that's a little bit, you know, a little bit progressive or a little bit left-wing, and you get a huge response for it, basically you start feeling like you've been given a mandate. It's just brilliant. It's just lovely. It's just like, no, this is working. People like this. I'm not getting in trouble for this. And people feel good about this. And I'm getting ideas back. I'm reading other people's blogs. You know, the amount that I've learned about, you know, about feminism and rights and politics and equality over the last couple of years. And you couldn't have done that without the internet. You sit there and, you know, you are able to talk to the world. You're able to get information from anywhere. You're able to platform people. And, you know, and that's why I think the internet, even though, you know, my message to women would be, don't be put off by the trolls and the rape threats and the death threats that you hear about, because first of all, you can block a lot of it out in a way that you can't in the real world.
It's not that many people.
It's still safer. No, it really is. Usually when you block 200 people, the problem goes away. And secondly...
That probably sounds like a lot, don't freak out.
Yes, no, but you know, you just press a button 200 times. Anybody who's played a computer game could do that. Exactly, yes. And they all go. It's like squeezing blackheads. They disappear. You know, if only you could do block in real life. And secondly, this is the first time ever that women have had an infinite space to do something and create things the way that we want to, and put in our structures and talk about what our priorities are and communicate within the way that we want to with each other. And there's far, far, far more for women in the internet than there are negatives.
We were having this discussion the other day, which is, I think, if you are in a position where people would use you as an example to say, well, structural inequality doesn't exist, because it is possible for a working class girl from Wolverhampton who has no GCSEs to her name to become a best-selling author, for example, and then point to you. I think if you have that, well, we were talking about it, and I was saying, I think there's a responsibility, isn't there? If you believe in structural inequality, which I know that you do.
Yes.
To kind of say, no, actually, everything is massively weighted.
Well, it also makes me furious.
Getting there.
Anytime anyone uses me as a weapon and goes, well, if she's managed to make it, this proves there isn't inequality. It's like, don't weaponize me. Don't pick me up and use me to hit the people that I'm trying to represent and defend. That's absolute balls, because you can tell the structural inequality, because how many other people like me are there? How many other working class...
But there are tons, right? But
well,
they're just not here. They just didn't get here.
Exactly. They were knocked out, and it's the same thing.
The kitchen should be rammed.
Yes.
But it's just us.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You look around...
This guy on the camera. Do you know what I mean?
He's the problem, the patriarchy. But there is a difference between a man and the man. You're not the man. You're a man, so you're okay. I have to keep explaining that to men. It's not about crushing men. It's just, you know, it's thumbs up for the 7 billion. It's not pro-women or anti-men. No. It's thumbs up for the 7 billion. But it's obvious. You know, whenever, you know, I write, I'm going to do my list of achievements. You know, I write columns, I write books, I write screenplays, I write films, I do stand-up. And in all the meetings that I go to and in all the award ceremonies for those industries, I walk in a room and I'm like, okay, there's 3 people of colour here and 2 of them are waiters. There are, 3 working class women here? But the rest of it's just a sea of straight white public school men. It's obviously unequal.
I think that the answer is a really dry answer, which is to do with management, because actually in the creative industries, I think it's more diverse than when you get to that. Sometimes think of it as like a sort of crust. There's like a crust just on top of, guys who are very similar.
The arse ceiling. It's like a ceiling made of arses, and they are the ones that are stopping us from getting through to the top layer.
But I think that's the thing that has to change. And it's kind of like I suppose a more fun, kind of cooler answer to say, let's get all these creative people to fix it.
Yeah.
I kind of think we need management diversity.
Yeah, what do you think the answer is? Well, I'm in favour of quotas, definitely. The answer's always given, like, if you put 50%, say, women into an office, then, they're not all going to be competent to do the job. And it's like, well, in the situation we're in where it's 100% men, they're clearly not all competent to do the job as well. Of course it's not. And you need to have, and then people will go, there are outliers, there's sort of like, a woman who's risen to the top on her own. But if you look at what happens to all those outliers, they go in there and it's great guns for a couple of years. They're like editing a newspaper, they're CEO of a company. And then they go a bit crazy and burn out or get fired because you can't keep being other. For years and years and years, you can't be the only clacking pair of high heels in a room that's otherwise filled with brogues. You can't see them all going off to play golf while you sit there. You're just going to, you will, it's like,
You see it in the history of artists, I think, female artists and writers and, everybody, it always ends badly. You can
only style it out for so long, and then because you're running on adrenaline, you always feel other. You never feel normal. And the things that I'm really interested in are increasing the lexicon, kind of like we just need to see more people there. And also definition of the word, control of the word normal. It still seems weird to me that I'm seen as abnormal. I'm a straight, white, cis woman. I'm married, I've got 2 kids, and I'm still seen as abnormal. That's crazy. And I don't see anything, culture should be like a mirror. And I don't see anyone or anything like me, unless it's a show that I've just written myself that'll be out next week on Channel 4. That's crazy. So, so if I was of colour, or I'm disabled, or I'm transgender, I just would give up. I wouldn't even try and go out there and engage it. But that's crazy because these are the people that have got stories that need to be told. Instead of going, that's just pandering to a minority, it's like, this is a goldmine of stories and people and experiences and new kind of monomyths and archetypes that we can have that will be entertaining and good for us. Mm-hmm. It seems absolutely crazy to me that we sort of like, we ignore all this stuff and yet we keep remaking...
Let's have the monomyth again.
Yeah.
Nobody's done that.
Let's remake Spider-Man for that. This is the thing, straight white men have run out of adventures to have so much that they have to be bitten by a radioactive spider every 3 years to give them something to do, to give them some obstacles to overcome.
Didn't you have a fight with someone the other day on the internet because you said that someone was telling you that they couldn't have a black Spider-Man?
Yes. Oh God, we were running with this. It was great. People came up with new theme tunes for Spider-Man and everything, and people were pointing out, you could be wearing anything under that suit, it doesn't matter. And then some people were just going, there's no way that you could have a black Spider-Man. It's like, dude, you're talking about a teenage boy who gets bitten by a radioactive spider and starts shooting web spaff out of his wrists. Where's the crazy here? Like, why? Where are we drawing the line with what's realistic and not what's not realistic?
Dr. Freud's ship sailed at shooting the stuff out of the wrists, didn't it? Really, it's like we're in the realm of fantasy at this point.
Well, also as well, that story makes more sense now. If somebody who feels completely alienated and other, who's going to feel completely alienated other? A straight white middle class boy or some black fucking kid? Who's in New York? That's where the story. That's going to give it far more emotional impact. Those stories actually only really make sense when you start playing around with gender and with race. And
if you are that person, right? Because as you say, you have been that person who feels different and feels other. What's the key to getting through it? What got you through it? Do you think it's embracing your otherness and kind of owning it, or what?
It's been being on the internet and realising you're not like kind of, when I do stand up kind of, we do sort of 2,000, I can't actually say we, it's me, it's literally just me. I do 2,000 seaters.
Craig David over here.
Hey! And
when Caitlin Moran does stand up, the character Caitlin Moran, not me.
Caitlin's going to lay some truth on you right now. They're 2,000 seater venues and we do signings afterwards. I do signings. It's literally me. There is no one else. It's me. I'm there. I can't own it. I can't own it.
It's all right. You don't need
I
to
can't
know
count.
Yeah.
1 or 2. And the signings will go on for like 2 or 3 hours afterwards. And you just keep getting girls coming up to you just going, I thought I was weird until I read your book, and then I realised I was normal. Like kind of, it just reading it, just going, me too, me too, me too, me too. And being on the internet, I'll tweet something out that I think is crazy, and you just get loads of people people just go, yep, me too, and then people will run with it and play with it. You know, that whole thing about a Black Spider-Man, just there were people playing that game for hours, all these different ideas. People were going, you know, we're drawing comics on this now, kind of like people were doing fan art about it, and you were just like, that's what the internet should be, it's play. You know, expand the idea of what is normal. And, you know, the internet makes me feel very normal. Because that's the other thing as well, you know, we grew up in an era where if you were the freaky kid in town, then you'd have to come to London to try and meet 2 or 3 other freaky kids and hope you were at the same party at the same time.
And that was how we met.
Exactly, yes, under a table. But now, you know, if you're the freaky kid in a Welsh village and you're the only person who's into like algebra and, you know, superheroes, you just go on the internet and meet 50 from all over the world, and you can always form a gang straight away. There's no such thing as loneliness with the internet. Even if you're at a train station at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can just be talking to someone in Australia about something. You never need to feel lonely again.
Changed motherhood as well, actually, because I think social media, between having my first baby and the second one, that kind of, like you say, that sort of 2 in the morning, that 3 a.m. kind of time.
Well, that's the other thing as well, that kind of the internet, like, you know, I get asked to do, like, you know, go on Question Time and sort of all the panel shows and stuff, and it's like, first of all, you know, going back to my thing about, you know, those are things created for men, and that's why women look uncomfortable in there, and I'm not going to try and bust in and do it, I'd rather go and do something else. And secondly, if Question Time's on, I can be at home looking after my kids. I haven't got to go into hair and makeup, I haven't got to go all the way to White City, I haven't got to sit uncomfortably in a green room pretending to talk to the Tory and like him. I can just tweet whatever I think, you know, 500,000 people will see it straight away, and then go straight back to looking after my kid who's got a fever. You know, kind of the internet allows you to be a mother and to communicate. And also that was the other thing with when we were writing Della, I was writing about this the other day, that like traditionally when you had a kid, you'd disappear for 10 years and you'd come back and you'd have lost contact with what all the in-jokes were and the memes and kind of the gossip and stuff, because you just would have been sequestered at home with your kids. But now you can just stay in contact. You know, you keep your brain fast and active. You know all the stuff. There's not that kind of, I'm back after 10 years. You never go away. You're still in contact with everybody.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, listen, Caitlin, thank you very much for being our first interviewee and for being on the internet right now. It's amazing.
It's my home from home. It's great. I'm going to watch this and tweet to myself while I'm watching it. You can see I'm a bit confused about time there, but I'm sure it'll work. I'll get my TARDIS. It's going to be amazing.